Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Well, today's project is going to be a Penn Fierce 3 6000 live liner. So this is a bait feeder mode. It has both a bottom adjuster and a top adjuster for the drags, and it has a free spool release where the bottom will control the bait feeding mode and allow you to let line out without flipping your bail. And then when you have a strike, when you click the reel, the free spool comes off, locks in the spool. Well, it's locked in, but it's locks in the spool and allows you to use the top drag to fight the fish. Well, we're going to take this reel apart. We're going to show you how to service it, show you how it's made, and well, I'll tell you a little bit more about the features and functions inside the Fierce. So we'll start by removing the exterior parts. That includes the handle and the spool. And as I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to the channel, particularly if you like fishing reel service and repair, or you just like learning about fishing reels, and well, how to service them, how to keep them fishing for a long time to come. All right, we've taken off the handle and the spools. Now we need to remove the side plate, and this one has the extra assembly in here for the that bait feeder mode or live liner mode. They're all the same in terms of just a name. They all do the same thing. Different manufacturers call them different things, but you saw me just put a little bit of penetrating oil onto that screw once I had started, so that it makes it easier for that screw to come out, because you do need to remove this side of the handle. You don't have to remove the other side, but you do have to remove the side that has the two screws in it. One is facing you, the other one's from the other side here. And that one's a little stubborn. It makes sense. These are exposed screws. This is kind of the same thing that happened with the first one. A little bit of penetrating oil in there should help convince it that it wants to come out. There we go. And then as you back it off and the oil works its way into the threads, it's a little bit easier to do that. You remove this little trip arm here. And one of the things I find with bait feeders, and in particular the Penn ones, is if you leave this arm on, it's going to steady the internal trip assembly. It makes it a little bit easier to work. When I take my pieces and parts off, I put them into a parts tray. You saw that the two bigger ones, they're on the outside. You're not going to lose those. But when you start getting into the springs and the screws and things like that, well, that's something that you want to consider. And whether you use a parts tray or you use something else, I do want to encourage you to have thought that out before you start doing the service, particularly the removal of those pieces and parts. All right, we're going to grab the side plate screws now. Again, this is a metal bodied reel. So you're getting metal screws and metal bodies that have been fished for a while. Yeah, they're going to be a little tight. So I just broke each one of those about a quarter turn. And we'll do the same thing here, just to make life a little bit easier. This has both I think I'm going to probably do best with that flat-bladed screwdriver. Sometimes the Phillips head works better, sometimes you need the other one. When you take these screws out, make sure that they're all the same size and have the same threads on there. If they're not, identify which one goes to the odd set, if you will. All right, that's one. These should come out. They should have a little plastic ring or washer underneath these. That's another attempt by Penn to seal that internal body on the lower case from the salt water. Most of the time a reel like this is used for trolling or for fighting fish that run a lot. But the live liner, the idea on the live liner is you put a minnow, or not a minnow, but a Manhattan or bunker for something that's live like that, and let it go. Let it swing away, and the more natural it looks, the more lifelike it is, the more convincing it will be for a fish to strike it. Alright, 4 are out, they're all the same screws. I'm going to find a corner of my parts tray to do that. And now we should be able to remove this side case. And it's usually pretty tight because of the way that it is. I'm going to back this off a little bit. I'm going to use a wedge here. There we go. We're out with the wedge. And yeah, we did knock that other side out, but that's okay. I didn't realize it was going to be stuck on this side. If that was the case, I would have put the other one back on, and I'm going to do that right now. Again, if you have an arm like this, and you can attach it, you're not going to disrupt the inside of that trip mechanism. So let's put that one back on. Makes it a lot easier. Alright, you'll see what happens here now when this is engaged. This is in the off position. You're going to notice that this ring right here, this point, is sitting below the main gear trip. When you go to put this into free spool, it's going to pull this lever up to release the hold on your bottom drag, and it's going to push this up as the trip back. So it's going to look like this when it turns. Now you're in the range of where the gear is going to hit. This is pulled up and out so your free spool can work. And again, when it trips, it's going to push it this way, and that will just replicate that here. Pull it down. That engages this slide right here, and you're in good shape with this. You don't need to take those pieces and parts off unless something is broken in there. Again, I'm going to use my penetrating oil. I use that kind of as a multi-purpose cleaner, degreaser, light lubricant. I don't use it as a full lubricant, but there's been some grease on here, so we're going to go clean that up and out. All right, I'm going to take fishing wheel oil and oil that assembly. And again, if you want, you can work it in and out by just simply pulling that lever back and forth a few times to make that work. All right, and again, you can see how this is going to come down as the lockout. Over here, you're going to see that there's right here, there's a gap right here on this assembly. That is what's going to be the lock-in point for your piece. All right, let's move this down so that we can remove the crosswind gear and the main gear. And while I do that, if you have any questions on this reel, or any reel, just leave that in the comments section. I will try to answer those questions for you. All right, I'm going to remove the screw that's holding this little double bridge, if you will. That's the tie down. You'll see it's a double C-clamp assembly. One goes high, one goes low. Take pictures. Remember on this one that the hole is on the bottom side as you removed it. And once you pull that out, hold that block and you can remove the axle shaft. I like to clean the pieces and parts as I take them off, so we'll wipe that down right now. And here you can see the two slots on the axle shaft where that tie down is going to go. It's going to go in here when you mount it like that and hold that axle shaft, enabling it to go up and down. Alright, that goes into my parts tray. We can remove the crosswind block now. We can remove the main gear, and we can remove the crosswind gear. So much of what you do in reel service and repair is just the cleaning. We can remove the assembly that has the rear drag in it as well. So we can do the cleanup now. Again, I'm going to do a spray down here. And I use a variety of things to clean. I use a paper towel, I use cotton swabs. If it's really stuck on grease, I'll use a screwdriver or something else as a scraper to kind of help with that. This one, for the most part, is in pretty good condition. The grease is pretty clean, which means that it hasn't seen a lot of salt water intrusion or anything inside of it. And overall, it's in relatively good condition. All right, we're going to remove the grease from the crosswind block. You want to check these pieces and parts as you do this. You want to make sure that this is not corrupted or broken or anything like that. Sometimes you'll see there'll be a crack in here or something that would mean it would have to be replaced. So clean that. That'll go into my parts tray. We'll take this one and do the same. Let's inspect the teeth. If you see that there's a little bit of old grease or that in there, just go in and grab a brush and pull through. Just like that. And again, all the teeth should be uniform, not broken or chipped or out of alignment or anything like that. Here's your back end gear. All the grease that came from the factories, well, it's been the subject of centrifugal force. It's managed to find its way onto the posts in the back, which, well, of course, there's nothing there. I'll just use a couple of cotton swabs to pick that stuff up. And a little bit of a shot of the penetrating oil. One more time to wipe it down. And we're in good condition with that. We have a bearing on this side, and underneath that bearing we have a C-clip which is holding on that trip assembly. This is your trip assembly here. And you can see that they're at right angles. Like every, I don't know, 90 degrees is right angles here. There's 3 trips. That point that I showed you on that back end of the assembly is going to hit this, and that's what's going to trigger the mechanism to go back into position. A couple of shim washers go on there. We can oil that bearing. That bearing is not sealed. It's got a shield on it. We can oil the bearing. We can put that back onto the main gear. So we've oiled the back one, oiled the front. Let's take a quick look inside here. This is what I was looking for. Your drag washer is in nice condition. It appears as though it's never been used. That's the thing I wanted to check there. If you needed to replace them, so just go do what I just did here. Just pull it off. Pull that drag washer off of here. There's 2 of them in this assembly. And we'll put it back together again. Sounds easy, right? All right. This goes back in. And notice that there is a slot here. That slot is going to mesh with the top. And that's how that will sit. The case screws will hold that on both sides. All right, before I go any further, I probably didn't need to put that on because I want to take the top off, service this side of the reel. Actually, I'm just going to remove that because I know it's going to kick out anyway. It's just the way things happen with me. On this, you can use an open wrench to remove the top rotor nut because you have a shallow bowl. If the bowl was any deeper, you would need to go to a socket. There is a plastic little insert there that goes inside the pinion gear, and that's to snug up the axle shaft. We're going to remove our rotor, and we're going to spray down the 2 joints on the rotor where the valve meets and onto the line roller. We're going to work that in. This one's working fine. Nice solid trip mechanism there. Then we'll come underneath and put a little bit of oil into that bar, which is going to trip it as well. I'll leave that off to the side because we'll be right back to that. We have a collar now for the secondary anti-reverse. So this one's got a little a notch on it. That's going to go into the ridges here and be a backup when you're fighting the fish. Underneath that we have an eccentric collar and a triangular spring with a point that faces up. When we go to reinstall, that's going to go right in that hole there. We can kind of set that right now if we like. You'll take that collar, the 90-degree spring goes in, collar goes on. That's how it's set, and this is the bottom, so it will go on this way. Put that on for now. This is the basic Penn top end for, well, geez, an awful lot of their spinning reels. The Battle, the Pursuit, the Fierce. This is a Fierce, and others use this setup. We have a collar that's held on by 3 screws. Then we'll have 2 bearings, a carrier, an anti-reverse clutch that kind of fills out that pinion gear. What we want to do is remove this so we can clean the pinion gear, inspect the pieces and parts, and make sure that everything works. I just had a Penn Battle come in, Battle 3, and the bottom washer was frozen to the pinion gear. So don't overlook this stuff. Don't think, oh, it's pretty well protected and now I'm just going to let it go. Don't do that. Okay. When you do this, you want to make sure that there's any differences noted on that collar, and there is. This side here that faces that little anti-reverse dog, it's got a flat part here so that this can come all the way back. Make sure when you go to reinstall that flat is facing that dog and that you don't have it, say, like this. Alright, I know I'm leaving a lot of parts on the table here. Just beware if that's something you choose to do. Alright, here's our carrier with the bearing 1. This is our anti-reverse clutch with the inner sleeve. This is the bearing 2. Bearing 2 is shielded. The other one's got a rubber seal on it. I'm going to make sure that I oil that. Do not oil your anti-reverse clutch. That's a friction-driven device that's not supposed to get oil. If you oil it, you reduce the friction. If you reduce the friction, well, it could slip. Okay, we've just cleaned out all of the threads on the pinion gear. They're all nice and clean and symmetrical. We want to use fishing reel grease here. I'm using Penn Precision reel grease to re-lubricate that. I was going to put a little bit where that bearing is going to ride. And then we can reassemble. The one with the metal casing shield goes up top. Then we have the inner spacer or gear sleeve, and we have the anti-reverse clutch. The anti-reverse clutch has got 2 sides. This one is a plastic side that goes below, and the metal finished side goes above. The rubber bearing inside the carrier is also different. The carrier has an indentation on the one side, flat on the other. The indentation side goes down. That's your case. Alright, just take a moment here to wipe anything that's left over inside there. So there's a little bit of grease hanging around the back there. And I would say this is probably the first time the reel is serviced, because this does look like the factory grease is inside. Alright, we're going to reinstall our assembly. Make sure that the lip of this is flat to the ridge. Remember, one side's got that flat side to it. That's the one that you want facing the anti-reverse arm. And then we get to play with our little screws. And those of you that know me and little screws know that this could be an adventure. We don't play well together all the time. This one I at least have the advantage. There's a little part of that carrier that I can at least get it to the lip of. Well, if you have any questions on this reel or any reel, just leave them in the comments section. I will try to answer those questions for you. I generally answer those questions in the morning following the videos. So if you're leaving one in the evening, you probably check and see around 9 or 10 o'clock Eastern time in the morning that you should have an answer. Unfortunately, or fortunately, this is not a 24/7 helpline, but I do try to help you out. So if you're stuck, leave that question. This is the third of the screws that go in now. And we'll put that little eccentric arm on. We showed you how to load this before. Told you that the right-handed spring goes right between those two carriers there. Now we can bring this over. Set it up on and make sure that the stud on that dog is in that track. So when you're regularly spinning this reel, it's going to pull it in. When you go to like that, when you go to back pedal, it's going to push it out like that. And those two points are going to grab the ridges on the inside. That's all we have to do on the top end. Let's take our rotor and put that back on. Grab the clear ferrule that belongs on the inside of your pinion gear. Now we bring our nut back on. Hand start that. You don't want to cross strip that. Nice thing with this one is it's hard to over tighten it because it has that cover on it. And well, you're pretty good there. Just need the one little screw. That's the tie down screw for that. And again, me and these little screws, well, we don't necessarily have a good time together. Try a little bit of fishing reel grease on the tip of the screwdriver to see if we can't hold it that way. Get it started. Find the appropriate hole. Just tighten that down to hold it. Oops, that was an oops. I put the cap on first. There you go. Cap's on. Now we can put that screw in. Got ahead of myself. All right. While you have this off, it's a good time to clean that rotor. So I'm going to use a little kitchen scrubby and some ped and rod and reel cleaner. Squirt onto there. Doesn't take much. Kitchen scrubby's got just enough abrasiveness on it to get rid of the film and the like that accumulates on the reel while it's being used. And well, you can do a nice job cleaning that up. Okay, we're done with the case. Time to reinstall. We've cleaned the gearing. Next up then is going to be the lubrication of this oscillation gear. Sometimes called crosswind gear. Front, back, center, face, everything gets grease on this one. Put that in. Guess we can take the moment now to put this back in. That's just experience there. I've dropped this piece several times as I've turned the reel to do different things, so it just makes sense to leave that out. Again, you want to check the drag washers in there. Those are in good condition. Crosswind, slot, stud. Stud goes in the slot. And that's where pictures may have helped. It's probably easy. I've seen it done where people have put the crosswind block on upside down. So nothing surprises me anymore. So just make sure that you have the orientation correct. Do the same thing here. We've cleaned the main gear. Time for fresh greases. Again, use fishing reel grease on these. You want to grease the front and you want to grease the teeth on the back. And you can get a little bit of grease onto the shaft there that's going to go through the other side plate bearing. Bring that in. Seat that. Next up is the axle shaft. Just a very light coating of grease on this. That plastic piece that you put in here is going to be very tight, so if you put a lot of grease on this, then it's just going to puddle it off here. And find the flat side of the axle shaft. That's going to face you as you bring that down. Just bring it down. And then when you get it to the point where you need to enter the carrier for your rear drag, just spin it until it links in and meshes. Next thing up you need to do is to align those two slots we showed you earlier. One goes high and one goes low to the block. And then we can grab that little piece. Remember what we said, that's the down point of this. Looks like I turned it and gravity worked. Swing that gate over and take the screw that belongs in there. This is a tough little one. I'm going to go for a micro screwdriver on this one. Again, a little dot of grease should be able to help me get it started. And we can bring that down. Okay, probably the most important thing right now is when you go to reset this case, make sure that this gap, this spacing here, is just like it's showing here. Because again, that's got to accommodate this little piece of metal. If it doesn't have that piece of metal in it, if you've spun it somehow, then you need to realign that. Otherwise, you're not going to get the case on easily. The other thing to look for, this stud needs to go through the hole in the back. And sometimes you're going to need to trip this lever to make all of that happen. So sometimes it goes on nice and easy, sometimes not so easy. As you see, I just tripped that lever and everything pulled in. And then I tripped it again, and now that line, that arm here is in that slot. Perfect. Not an easy thing to do, but with practice and playing around with it enough, you figure it out. All right, I should be able to get most of these screws at least started with the Phillips head. Probably have to finish it off with the flathead driver. That's next. And then we'll go service the spool, and we'll see how we did. So it's not that much more difficult than working on the standard reels. Yes, you have two drag systems in here. Yes, you have more moving parts. But if you just take your time, have some patience, generally speaking, it's just not that much more difficult than doing it the other way. Most of the key things that we've done, the cleaning, the re-greasing, the inspection, the taking the pictures, the references that we have, all of that stuff is pretty much straight up common to all reels that you service. Okay, I'm using the flat blade now to get a little bit more grip on those screws, and we'll finish this up. And when I do this, I like to tighten them up in an X pattern. I like to keep the tension as close as I can on those side plate screws. I don't want to over torque one side and have it bind on the other. Okay, one more piece here is that arm. Again, the one side is a press-on. The other side has the screw, and then there's that small screw in the middle here, which we need as well. Back to that micro driver. Let's put this in. Bring our handle on. Now you can do right here, that tends to get some salt and like build up. Put some penetrating oil. There's an anti-seize. You can also do that on the base of the knob here. Let's set this aside for just a moment. We have a minute to do the top, and then we'll give it a test. I'm going to use a rubber band here. This braided line is wanting to escape. All right, top comes off. Top drag system. This is the 3, so I think in the 3 series they've switched over to, well, it says right on the button there, HT100 drag washers. In the past they've used felt washers in here, so now they're using the HT100s. And these are the HT100 washers that behave like eared washers. You have the studs where they sit in the channel. First thing you want to do after you remove the washers from the cavity is clean it out. This takes an awful lot of water. As you're bringing your line in and it's wrapping around, it's throwing water into the bowl. And well, if you don't clean it out, you can get stuck there. I'm going to use some dry grease on this. It's optional, but in this case I'm noticing these are pretty dry, so I want to grease them up. I use my gloved hand as the tool to spread it. First one in is a fabric washer. In this case it doesn't matter because all 3 of the metals are going to be the same. These are acting as the eared washers. Eared washers hold the spool during the drag. The rectangular ones hold the axle, and when you clamp between the 2, the axle and the spool are held firm. As you loosen it up, one of them will slide, and that's how you get variable play in the drag. Alright, last one. Don't over grease these, just enough where you can still see the cross hatchings. This is your last one of these. That goes in, and our retention clip goes into the slot. It's time to put this back on. Again, I have that little piece here. We can clean up the top of that, clean up the sides. And clean up an ISO. We'll take that glove off, mop this up, bring this around, clean the inside. There is one more washer here that's a height washer for the line carry, so that'll go on there as well. Alright, you can oil that little click tongue there. Let's go ahead and put this back on then. Put the click button back on. Tighten it down to make sure that your drag washer is holding, and then back it off. You don't want to compress those washers. You don't want to squeeze the grease out of them. That defeats the purpose. And if you leave that top tightened down, well, it's acting as a vise to do that. All right, let's just see how we did then. Oh, nice and smooth and easy, isn't it? Look at that reel. Beautiful. Most importantly, does the free spool work. We're going to drop that down. It's going to let your line out. You can control the line's rate of release. Got everything greased up here. By simply turning the drag adjuster button below, that'll slow down the release line rate. It will never lock it down completely, but it will slow it down. And well, does it trip when it goes back? Remember what we were showing about the levers. It trips right back in. That locks the top spool, and now you're on top drag fight. Wow, that was fun. I hope you've enjoyed the video on how to service the Penn Fierce 3. This is the 6000 live liner. We've taken it apart completely. We showed you how it works, showed you the critical points in the maintenance, and well, how to keep it fishing for a long time to come. If you like it, please like the video, and if you want to see more, please subscribe. I want to thank our police, our fire, safety, rescue, EMTs, and everybody involved in public safety and support, and I appreciate everything it is that you do day in and day out. And I want to thank you, the viewer. If you're still with me, thank you, thank you, thank you. And well, I hope you've enjoyed it, and stay tuned because there'll be a lot more coming. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing everybody a great day.